Bom dia. Sejam bem-vindos ao terceiro webinário do segundo ciclo de webinários internacionais realizado pela Agência Nacional de Águas e Saneamento Básico, ANA, em parceria com o Instituto Alemão de Tecnologia
Welcome to the third webinar of the second cycle of ANA and ITT. This actually counts with 4 webinars in the context of the discipline Integrated Management of Water Resources and the mastering of a national network in the regulations of water resources, Profiagua. We have simultaneous translation for English, Portuguese, and Spanish in this event. ANA has presented a series of webinars adapted to a moment of pandemics to allow the continuity of the exchange of experience and capacity building, even at distance. They try to bring up-to-date information from different contexts, world contexts, and themes of world interest in the water context. In order to offer a greater dynamism, the proposal here would be to have a conversation, a dialogue with great experts of water, every participant that are also our guests to enhance this conversation. Today, we're going to watch presentations about the integrated management of water resources and sustainable development. We're going to have the presentations from Ecuador and Mexico with the integrated management of water resources, besides the strategy for both countries to fulfill the strategy, the SDG number 6, ensure the sustainable and availability of water for all. The water is in the center of sustainable development and in its 3 dimensions: environmental, economic, and social. The access to water and sanitation is important in all aspects of the human dignity, since the food security and energy security to human health and environmental aspects. Therefore, the scarcity of water has been affecting more than 40% of the world population, and this number trends to increase due to the climate change and the improper management of water resources. So, it is very important and possible to follow a new pathway that would take us to achieving this objective, SDG 6, protecting the water springs, basins, and international cooperations. In this context, the integrated management of water resources is a process that promotes the development, but also the coordinated management of water, soil, and resources related to it. The objective is to foster the socioeconomic well-being without impacting the sustainability of the ecosystems. I am Moraes Alcântara, civil engineer, doctor in natural resources, professor for the Federal University of Campina Grande, Paraíba, Campi Samay, professor for Profiagua SCG. Today I'm here as the moderator for this webinar. To compose our debate, we are going to count with the representatives from Ecuador, and Mexico, bringing different perspectives about the topic. Dr. Alicia Correa Barahona is a civil engineer, mastered in managing and conservation of soil and water, and doctor in natural resources. Currently, she's an associated researcher for the Center of International Development in Environmental Researches, University in Germany. And she was a joint professor in the School of Geography for the University of Costa Rica, and from 2018 to 2020, she participated in the creation of the Além unit for the teaching for the mastering courses in the integrated management for water resources in Latin America and Caribbean region. And with an experience in water resources, she revised and published several articles in international papers. Dr. José Agustín Naranjo is a hydrologic engineer, mastered in the engineering of water resources, and a doctor in hydrology for the Freiburg University in Germany. He is the coordinator of hydrology in the Mexican Institute of Technology of Water, where he develops researches in the monitoring of hydrometeorological phenomena, extreme phenomena, droughts, floods, remote sensoring of the water resources, besides the nexus water, energy, and food. He also revised and published several articles in international papers, index papers. Our event will last for an hour and a half. The format consists in a conversation with our guests, and approaching relevant issues about the topic for about an hour. In the first half of this webinar, Dr. Alicia Correa will talk about the case of Ecuador, and right afterwards, Dr. Agustín Naranjo will talk about the Mexican experience. Right after each presentation, we are going to have a Q&A session with the audience, and the public could be sending questions since now in the Q&A button in Zoom platform. So let's start. Dr. Alicia, please. Thank you so much. It's a great honor to be here with you talking about the Ecuador experience. As Hugo was saying, well, I am now working in Germany, but I am from Ecuador, and I've always been focusing on Ecuador projects. Good afternoon, good morning also, and now I am going to be sharing my screen so we could start with my presentation. Could you just confirm that the presentation is on the screen? Okay, is that it? It's correct? Okay, perfect. So, the topic for today in Ecuador and the relationship between water, energy, and food. That's what I will be focusing on today. First of all, I would like to make a presentation about a small scheme of what I will be talking about now, which would be the current state in Ecuador with water, energy, and food, and talk about the emblematic examples of the country, and I believe that are very important in different zones as well, in the north, in the central region, and also in the southern region. And the lowest scale in relation to Ecuador, but where the integrated use of water resources is extremely important. Before going to this slide, I would like to highlight how the point of data availability. Every time in the scheme that we see, as you could see on the screen, we had a larger amount of monitoring and data, but this has been decreased after so many years, and now it is in a scale of decades, just decreasing for a decade. And we could also understand this. We could see how the hydrological uses and how the processes is behind all of this for a better management of water resources. Going towards the Ecuador side, I here present some maps from Ecuador. Ecuador, for those of you that do not know, is in this part of South America, surface of 256,000 square kilometers. It's around the Andes region and in the coast, and also Amazon region. So in these maps, we have a zone that would be the Galapagos Islands. And in the maps that I present right now, the first in the upper part shows us the rainfall, the average annual rainfall calculated for Ecuador. The values that you could see are in millimeters, so you could have a better idea of the spatial variety, which is very big in the country, with zones of Amazon with more rainfall, and also other regions with a very low rainfall near to the Pacific coast in the south. In the following map, down here you could see the soil use or land use, and we could see that 60% is forest coverage, 20% we have 16% of pasture. We have a large water area in our country. So in the following map, you could see also how the distribution is in this case of the meteorological drought of the country. We could see that they suffer much more. The coastal region has much more drier periods in the Pacific zone. You could see a great incidence here. And also in the map, the lower map, we could, just for contextualization, the last one that I'm talking about here is the ones for floodable areas. Likely for floods, you could see in light blue, and these are potential areas for floods. And on the right side of the slide, you could see a graph, a larger graph with, as you could see, with some information and essential data about the country, such as the area, population, almost 18 million of inhabitants, the annual rainfall average, which is 2,250 millimeters, the number of rivers, the first order, and of primary order. And it's interesting to see also how the amount of water resources we had. We would depend much more on superficial waters in the case of Ecuador and less on underground water. And as a baseline, this is the water consumption for 2010. And here it would be around 16,000 cubic meters. And here you could see the projection of the water resources for different use. And the number has been increasing a lot. So if we add up all these three numbers here, in relation to the populational and technological development. And in the following slide, and also it is considered important, this part of the infrastructure which we have in Ecuador. The first, with the blue dots, would be all of the reservoirs that are in our country, Ecuador, dedicated for water storage. As you could see, we have several reservoirs that we consider here. And also the infrastructure which is made for the hydro energy generation or hydroelectrical power plants. The resolution of this map is not so clear, but all the points and the red, all the dots and the red marks are where we have the hydroelectrical power plants implemented in our country. Contextualizing all of this in relation to water, energy, and food, which is also very important to know about the cultivations and crops that we have. They're plantable areas and pastures that could also be used as cultivation areas in our country. The table on the right is still the same in extension, and put this information so you could have a clear idea of how it is. The Ministry of Environment, Water, and Ecological Transition makes, well, the new government had this ecological transition considered in the work of the ministry, and that is the axis which guides the water resources in Ecuador. And they are the ones responsible for this management. The ministry established a national plan of integrated water resource management, IWRM. Number 9, that would be, and for each of those basins, we had proper management plans focusing on the local need for each of those units. And those basins are, you can see their names here on the slide: Mira, Esmeralda, Guanabí, Guayas, Jubones, Triangle, Catanayo, Namba, and Pastaza. These are the names of the basins. And to the right, you will be able to see also the amount in volume of superficial water resources in this case, because you can see that we depend strongly on superficial waters. And you can also see the volume of water, superficial water resources for each of those basins. And the ministry established these plans. These basins represent amount of water. These are with larger amounts. They are the Amazon basins. Some of them are transboundaries, such with Colombia and Ecuador, who are our neighbors. And the other ones are basins which go to the Pacific side. And in relation to this view, a general view for the change of perception in Ecuador in relation to the integrated management of water resources, and the change of positioning that we had since the 90s is very strong. In the beginning, we had as an interest for the management of water basins a way which was kind of individualized, as it is, not in a collective way. We considered it, and also we saw the basins as a provider of a certain amount of water without focusing on its quality and the systemic and other services that were we were becoming more aware throughout time. And in 2008, we had a more holistic view in relation to the Constitution of Ecuador, in relation to the use of water resources and also food sovereignty and sustainability, and also other aspects that now are extremely important for the sustainable development. In 2008, we have then the first phase, and for 2021, that's where we are now. Well, yes, it's more important for us the quantity, but also for the quality of water is important, maintaining the ecosystemic services and the territorial planning and the integrated management in this case are extremely important as well. Very important for the better use. And with this perspective, which is a little bit more integrated and holistic, we could get to the aspects of being able to control and approach those topics of water supply with more intelligent and adaptive technologies to the climate change, to adapt to those changes, and also the generations of clean energy, in this case, the generation of hydroelectricity. In the framework, our national reference framework, I would like to mention three legislations or laws that are the base or the foundation of the organic law of water resources and water use for 2014, from 2014, and this organic code or framework. And also, besides that, we have the environmental legislation. So these are the laws that are here that we are working on. Continuing with this holistic view of the WEF nexus, water, energy, and food nexus, which is extremely important for the development, I would like to talk about a scheme involving different sectors, just like this case of the Andes Mountains, the Andean Mountains that cut Ecuador, and the biomes generate a largest amount of water resources and lots of ecosystemic services for the water and crops. In the upper part, you could see that the Andean Mountains, we have the glacial waters and they help in the water supply for the lower parts where the hydroelectricity is generated. And that's also a good region for fishing. And we also monitored the quality and the quantity of water in this region. And more downstream, you could see the agriculture, which is one of the largest consumers of water at a global perspective. And in this case, it would not be different because agriculture, the families farming, or we have the small scale and large scale agriculture there. Yes, in the rural area, we could see the family farming, planting rice, coffee, banana, cocoa, which are the main products that leverage the local economy. And going more downstream, we can talk about the social dynamics in relation to the transportation and education, people transport to have access to education, also the children. And we have to take into consideration the additional aspect of the Amazon and the different biodiversities from the coastal zones. So it's very important for the waters are very important for the transportation, so we could be transporting uh, those those boats. And as a potential consequence of climate change that we are going through, we have the lower part of the scheme where we see the melting of the glaciers and the redistribution of water impacting the energy production and water supply and soil and water degradation. If we don't take care of our cultivations, we have increased GHG and energy demand. We have a biodiversity loss and in zones that are extremely vulnerable as well to severe floods and droughts. All of these, everything is connected to the water and generation with water, food, generation of energy and food, and connected to the SDG. Of course, that we have several of these, mainly SDG 6, 7, 2, and 8. clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, zero hunger, but we also have other SDGs that are connected to it: climate action, gender equality, quality education, and others. So you just could have an idea of this perspective. In Ecuador, well, we have a database for all the countries, and I could share here as an example the WF Nexus Index and how these indicators are in Ecuador in regards to the rest of the world. So the value that Ecuador got to was 65.6. That's the index, the WF Nexus Index, which is an indicator of 28, composed by 28 other indicators, which indicate to us what would be the value that we have, if it's a good value, if it's a bad value. Ecuador is on the 27th world rank. And you could see that this index is being composed by the water pillar, in this case, the highest point that Ecuador achieved with 73.3. Right afterwards, we could see the energy pillar, 65.1, and then the food pillar, which is 58.4, the lowest one that we have. That's a very interesting data to have an idea of the national scale, or the scale in relation to what we are doing well, where we could be improving, and also treat this database with integrated management, or the proper management of water resources. And after talking about this part, the general ideas that we have of the country, I would like now to talk about the small initiatives, or the local initiatives that we have in relation to water resources. In this case, the first one I will present to you here is an example of the northern region of Ecuador, the city of Quito, which is FONAG. FONAG is an institution in charge for protecting the water springs through funding for the water. This is a water fund, the first of the world, and it accounts with more than 20 years of experience in protection and incorporation and recovery of water that is supplied to the city. So with these 20 years of experience, we have the local regional trust. It's because being the first of the world is a very good indicative, ensuring the sustainability and the financial flow for the better development of their activities. Through this platform, with international stakeholders and regional local stakeholders as well, FONAG is responsible to establishing all the points that you could see here on the screen, such as establishing agreements and restoring ecosystems, and giving hydrometeorological and social and environmental information of good quality, and also establishing educational programs. And also, FONAG, in its activity plans, we have here 4: water management, restoration of plant vegetation covers, surface and areas of high water conservation, and environmental education. We also have the hydroclimate monitoring, valuing of the water services, use of water, the analysis of the ecological springs, and also with all these actions and joint strategies that were developed, was the base and the foundation of the successful actions that we had. And they also received a prize, or an award, recognizing the great work and their contribution to reach SDG 6, mainly. And also the activities in other SDGs that are also connected. A second initiative that I would like to share to you in relation to the Mashangara River Basin, which is in the center-south, the mid-south of Ecuador, and that's also an emblematic example of integrated management. You could see here that we have the tree chart, this tree structure, to see the focus of the work. We have the geological, ecological, hydrological, and climate, environmental education, community relations, which is extremely important, monitoring, and also the communication and spreading the information. Talk to the people that are around the basins and out of the basin about the benefits and what is being done. So with all of this, the tree of ideas, the general objective is the reduction of the vulnerability of the impact of climate change in the basin. It is a basin of 32 and 500 hectares. You could see the coverage, the vegetation coverage of this basin. We have here the component of Paramo, and Ecuador is a very important vegetation, and woods, forests, pasture regions in orange. And you could see also a very urban region, which is very large. And the main ecosystemic services in this water basin, you could see the four being highlighted here: water for human consumption, water for irrigation, ecological conservation, and also the production of hydroenergy. As integrated management for this water basin, we have the monitoring of the water quality. As you could see here, is a very simple and basic example of one of these parameters that we have, which is here. The monitoring of the quality of water, the quality of the water for those rivers, and all other activities, for example, would be fostering the best agricultural practices. And we could see very intelligent cultivation processes, and how we could see the production in small scale and a more varied production. So this integrated management of the basin encourages the best practices of agricultural of the agricultural actions. We have focused a lot on environmental and rural education. And this year, which was so different for everyone, but especially for the rural areas, where they do not have much internet access, and for the coastal regions also, was a huge challenge relation for the populations of Ecuador. And that leveraged the delivery of educational materials for the homes, so they could be generating knowledge for those children, having classes locally. And we also gave support to the commercialization and trade. And I also repeat that in these COVID days, it's very different for everyone. And we could see this picture here, this image to the left, some people selling their products in baskets so they could be sustaining themselves. And we could see this kind of food security. So the Conservation Committee and Basin Use gave a lot of support to these activities. And not to delong much, the last set that I would like to talk about would be, and I'm working on this aspect now, in focusing on the water basin and the integrated management, besides the transboundary basins that we have with Colombia, Peru, and Brazil, in relation to the Amazon basin. And here we have the profile that you could see going from in the Pacific. We have maybe almost 6,000 meters above sea level with the Mountain 1, Mountain 2, and we go down to the Amazon region. It's a huge potential of water or hydro energy. And we are now working for this integrated use. And you could see to the right some pictures of those rivers and the basins that we are talking about in the lower region, called Mira y Mataje. And that goes towards the Pacific, and Putumayo River that goes to the Amazon basin. So besides on the principles of integrated water resource management, well, then we also have to work in a natural scale in the countries and in a basin scale. And that's a good point, because I believe that it's important to talk about, not only talk about the country, but we have also to talk about in relation to the transboundary and integrated use. And the focus that we have is a focus that, well, first we have the socioeconomic analysis of the context, identifying the key stakeholders and the key sectors, and besides identifying the environmental impact of the economic activities, the intersectorial issues that exist, and all this information as we could that could help us understand that what would be the perception of those people that are connected to these zones in relation to the water use in general and all the impacts of climate, the climatic impacts. And the second part that you could see would be a focus on the clues framework. And below this umbrella, you could see how we would work on the water models and their components. These would be the soil or groundwater, and we could see how the processes are being generated to understand the amount of water we are going to have in this hydrological model to supply to the energy model, and also to supply the land model. All this macro holistic data or focus of clues framework is becoming very important in the previous years in the publication of researches that transforms this in something extremely important for a better management. But it's only having water resources without without connecting the water, energy, and land models. Well, we must have a participative dialogue, and and then this way we will empower the benefits, or bring more benefits in relation to this focus, integrated focus, combined with a local perception. And I already extrapolated my time of 25 minutes, so I would like now to thank you for your attention, everyone, because, well, we are going to have this is my email for questions and contact. Please send me an email if you would like. I'm completely available. Thank you. Thank you very much, Alicia. Now, continuing our conversation, we are going to see some questions sent by the participants of this webinar. We are going to have around 30 minutes for these questions and respective answers. In case your question is not answered, the organization staff is putting in the staff 2 emails to which you could be sending your questions, and afterwards these questions will be sent to the speakers. Alicia, at first now we have 2 questions from Carla Romão, and I will make these questions to you. Well, according to Carla, in her opinion, the percentage of 60% of forest coverage and the soil use or land use in Ecuador is significantly comparable to Brazil. Is there conflicts in relation to water use to agriculture? She's also asking if there are severe problems as deforestation, like in Brazil. And I also would like to know if in Ecuador you have a mechanism to charge for the use of water resources. So these are the questions coming from Carla Romão. Is it possible to translate this to Spanish? In the chat, it was already translated, but you could use the simultaneous interpretation button selecting Spanish language, and you could also learn the question being made in Spanish if you would like. Could you find the interpretation button so I could repeat the question for you? Yes, please. Okay. So, in Carla, in her opinion, the percentage of 60% of the forest coverage and land use in Ecuador is significant in comparison to Brazil. Are there conflicts with agriculture in relation to the water use? And she's also asking if there are severe problems with deforestation like in Brazil. And also, she's asking if in Ecuador there is a mechanism to charge for the water use. Well, in relation to this first part of 60% of forest coverage, and that it's important comparing to Brazil. Well, yes, we do have conflicts with agriculture, that's right. With agriculture, we can see a lot of conflicts there, a lot of land use change, and the implementation of plants. In this case, the palm tree is very important in those bases that go to the Pacific region. And also, this type of agriculture would be one of the factors that are the most important where we could see conflicts. And on one hand, we have the law that protects the natural resources, but also on the other hand, we have not reached an agreement or decide what are the zones that could be potentially used for the implementation of agricultural production. Well, there is an intense debate that generates lots of conflicts, and we have, well, this limits the plan of territorial ordering and organization where they allow the change of forest use. In relation to the second part, if there are severe problems in relation to deforestation,
Deforestation.
Hay problemas, sí, entonces, deforestación.
sim, sim, yes, we do have problems in relation to this, in relation to the agricultural border, not only talking about the lower forest region, but also to the upper regions. And yes, we still have an expansion of the agricultural borders towards those water springs that are very important for Ecuador. And lots of cities in Ecuador and Colombia depend on those resources, water resources, and there's increase or expansion of those agricultural areas or of the reforestation is also evident in Ecuador. I would like to know if in Ecuador there is a mechanism to charge for the water use. That's another question from Carla. Yes, there is. It is a mechanism of compensation, as we call. Yes, we do have programs, but not completely extended. We have some programs that are where there are some people, well, depending on the carbon, for example, when they have the plantation of trees or forests that store the carbon, they have to reduce, they have to pay an economic amount. There's a program, it's not extensive, but there are these programs with local initiatives in Ecuador. Okay, thank you very much. The third part of the question, she's asking if in Ecuador exists some kind of mechanisms to charge for the water use.
Alicia, me escuta?
Yeah.
Do you hear me, Alicia? Yes, yes, I can hear you. So Carla Romão is also asking if there is a specific mechanism to charge for the water use in Ecuador. For the use of water, right? For the use of the water. Yes, yes. There is the payment for the water use in the rural context. We have small groups that work with this water, but yes, we do have a financial payment for this use of water. Yes, always they do have to pay for that. We have another question. What would be the water sustainability indicators and or environmental indicators that Ecuador used to monitor the efficiency of the agricultural management efficiency? For example, the change of technologies and cultivations or crops. I will repeat the question, Alicia. What are the water sustainability index or environmental indexes that Ecuador uses to monitor the efficiency of the agricultural management efficiency? For example, around the changes of technologies and crops and cultivations. Well, in terms of indicators of sustainability, lots of them were not shared here. Well, we do have lots of them in the case in the water, energy, and foods nexus. We have some indicators at a subnational level to see what is happening and what we could be doing in relation to this. Okay, Alicia. The next question is how the management of water resources would be included or inserted in the educational system of Ecuador. Oh, wonderful. There is a lot of influence in these previous years, for mainly in the universities. They were involved with the research centers and the development of work and theses on graduations and masterings, besides the publications in a local scale of what is going on and how the water resources are being managed for the respective cities. As an example, I could give, I mentioned a university from the Basins University or Bacia University, which have lots of agreements with companies and institutions that use water and energy, and this bind or this connection that is with the higher education, focusing on water management. Thank you, Alicia. And due to our time of this conversation with Alicia, we have one more question. How is the issue of energy generation and sewage treatment in Ecuador? Yes, residual waters. Well, yes, not in all cities, but we do have the treatment in the main cities that collect the these residual waters in the cities. It's being now more extended to the local initiatives. At least the treatment lakes are extended to all the cities, but the marginal side of the rivers, the riverbanks, the riversides, is extensive in our country. And we're taking very important steps in relation to sanitation, like MAPAS, which is a very important project for the management of residual waters in Quito, considering the quality indicators that we have for those waters and that are very satisfactory. So the treatment are bringing very important results in relation to the residual waters. So the last question now, because of the time, is there a website where we could be finding the water resource legislations from Ecuador to compare to the legislations from other countries? Yes, this website here, as I mentioned, is from the Ministry of Water, Environment, and Ecological Transition that take care of all of those issues. And in this site of the ministry, you can find all of those informations related to the plans that we have for the water integrated water resource management. I can share this link on the chat. So everybody, for those of you that would like to make this research. Thank you so much, everyone. We would like to thank you, Alicia. Now we're going to pass the words to Dr. Agustín Naranjo, who will talk about the Mexican experience. Right afterwards, after his presentation, we are going to have also a Q&A session with the participants. And the participants can start sending the questions now through the chat or the Q&A button. Good morning, all of you. Before I start, I would like to say that it's a huge pleasure to be here with all of you. And thank you very much for the invitation to be here with the National Agency of Waters to talk a little bit about the experience in Mexico around the integrated water resource management. And I am Agustín Naranjo. I work in the Institute of Technology for Waters, which is a public center for research focusing on topics related to water and its management. Well, to start then, we can talk a little bit about Mexico and the main characteristics of Mexico. We can say that Mexico is in the northern hemisphere, south to the USA. We have maybe a fifth of the Brazilian surface, 2 million square kilometers, different from Brazil and Ecuador, that are in the equatorial region that has abundant rain during a great part of the year. In Mexico, we have a part which is tropical with a lot of rain, as you could see here on the map, in the southern and southeastern region of Mexico. In a year, we have about 2,000 to 4,000 millimeters in a year of rainfall. But After we go more north to latitudes 23 of the Cancer tropic, we could see there are zones where we have less rain. And this makes the half of the Mexican territory to have rainfall below 600 millimeters per year, as we are talking about a different topic. And in the other half of the year, it would be in arid or semi-arid conditions. Well, the annual average is around 760 millimeters per year, and about 70% of this number here, or this amount, is related to the atmosphere. Less than a third or a fourth, a little bit less than a fourth, would be dark rivers from superficial waters, and 6% would be the aquifers. Well, 6%, if we go up to the north, to this peninsula, where we have rain for 100 to 200 millimeters per year. And this brings another aspect that we have, which is the spatial distribution of rain. And here you could see that in Mexico, we have a wet season mainly in the summer, in the northern hemisphere. As you could see, the months of June, July, August, September. And we could also see that more than a third of this rain is concentrated in the 4 months that I just mentioned. And while spring, that goes from February, March, April until May, they would be the drier months. That's our drought season. And besides this spatial variation and time separation of the rains, Mexico is found in the tropical interconvergence zone. And this zone is very vulnerable to the tropical storms and hurricanes, as you could see in this map. The hurricanes, besides the negative impacts as floods, mainly for the plain regions and the coastal regions, it's also an important contribution for the recharge of the aquifers, mainly to the northern and central regions, which are the drier regions for Mexico. And, well, besides half of Mexico not having water enough, and the other half has water shortage, we now compare to other countries in the water availability per capita. We are one of in the whole Americas, probably we are the country with the lowest amount of water per capita. It's an average a little bit under 4,000 cubic meters per person per year. And as we compare to other countries such as Brazil and USA and Canada, we are talking about numbers and values that are very low in Mexico. The main cause of this low water availability, as we could see here in this graph, we could see the populational increase or the populational growth from 1950 until today. In 1950, we had 25 million, and currently we have more than 120 million inhabitants. And obviously, when dividing the water availability, the total water availability in our territory, for all of the inhabitants, we could see how this number is going down in the green line. And here, just like Ecuador, we could see the demand of water going to agriculture, mainly for irrigation, around 77%. And the rest would be going for public urban use and also the industrial use. Well, where is the water that we consume come from? More than 60% of those water comes from superficial waters or superficial sources, mainly the dams. You could see the location of the main dams and reservoirs for water storage in Mexico. And we also have the hydroelectrical power plants, and the hydro energy is produced mainly in two basins in Mexico, three basins in Mexico. And you could see them here in the south, in the state of Chiapas, approximately where we produce maybe 70% of the hydro energy in this basin. And then we have the Herbaza Basin, after and the Santiago River, and they count with very important hydroelectrical power plants as well. And 62% of those waters consumed in Mexico come from these superficial waters, and 30% would come from the aquifers. However, the greatest part of most of the agriculture would be focusing on the northern central region, and that's the driest region of the country. This caused, as you could see in this map, to the right, you could see that the red polygons are the aquifers which have, well, where we observed about the exploitation, they would have the problems of saline composition due to excessive pumping. So what would be the main cause for the exploration and the saline issues? Mainly the irrigation agriculture. Mexico would have approximately 6.5 billion hectares in our territory for irrigation, and that's a very significant number. It really exceeds the number of Brazil. And Mexico is also in the top 10 countries with the largest irrigated surfaces in the world. And now we can see the water supply for drinking and the sanitation system. You can see in the map the proportion of the population with receiving water in their homes every day, and the basic sanitation. And you could see here also in our country, we would have the northern part of the country with the highest number of households daily. And if we go to the southern central part, we could see that some states, each polygon would be a different state in Mexico, right? And Mexico has 32 states. And we could see that there are some cases like the state of Guerrero, which has 1 in every 10 inhabitants having water supply every day. Another problem that we have in Mexico would be the leaks, the loss of water. That would be about 60% of the volume that enter in the drinking water systems are lost because of the leaks or the leakage, and this is 40% of the cost that is extracted. That would be 40% of the volume being extracted. Besides the leakage, this is also due to other aspects, as you could see. Bad operation, mainly in administrative financial operation, and those makes the operating organisms or institutions. In each city and municipality would have their own operational drinking water and sanitation institutions. And the states most of these institutions or bodies would have lots of debts, large debts. They need to be receiving subsidies from the government, federal government. And what would be the document, the main document that defines the public policy for water and the water management in Mexico? It would be the National Water Plan. In Mexico, we count with the National Law of Waters, which is from 1992. And in this National Law of Waters, it is established that each government and each federal administration that comes to power, in this case, each administration lasts for about 6 years. So 6 years we change government. So the new government must generate or establish a national water plan. And this national water program is in the National Development Plan. as a special plan. And when the National Water Plan is published, and that is in the beginning of each federal administration or term, and they have also the regional water plans in them. In Mexico, Mexico is subdivided in 3 administrative water regions in order to decentralize the decision-making process. And the country is divided in 13 administrative water regions, as I already mentioned, and every 6 years we count with the water programs and specific regional water programs. And there it is defined the actions and the strategies for the water sectors for the following 6 years. Currently, this document is previously consulted and shared with NGOs, universities, and also users from the private sector or the major companies. So we could get to, we hear lots of voices, not only from the government, but also from out of the government. And that would be considered in the National Water Plan. Here we could see some differences of the National Water Plan. And the previous water plan from 2014 to 2018, and the current water plan that is from 2020 to 2024. Here we could see the policy and the management as it is changing and evolving in relation to the commitments, the international corporations. And we could see that these plans, if the plans are compliant to some international agreements. And for example, we could see the previous government was a center-right government, and the plan had 6 objectives. The first objective would be to strengthen and to focus on the sustainable integrated management of water. And for the first time, they were talking about water security in an explicit manner. So it's the first time that a program or the topic water security was considered in a program. And we also talk about strengthening the water, the access to, or the water services, the drinking water services, sewage and sanitation services as well. These are the 3 most important objectives. In the new government, which is a center-right government, and here we mention for the first time the human rights to water and how to ensure this. Well, here we do not talk about contemplating or carrying out pilot studies. Here we would be talking about ensuring the human rights to sanitation and water. And this is compliant to the objectives or the SDGs, number 6 of the United Nations. And also, instead of talking about water security, we have also to talk about vulnerability. Here on the right side of the water plan, we're going to start working with the most vulnerable populations. And the extreme waters, mainly the floods and droughts, these efforts will be focusing on the more vulnerable populations. And also, for the first time, it mentions about the water services and the hydrological services that that work with the bases in aquifers, and also the governability. And explicitly, it is referring to the fight against corruption as well. And here it mentions clearly that that we have corruption in the water sector, and we must fight against it. Well, another important aspect of this water management of water resources management. And using this national water plan, we also implemented the basin councils and a decentralized water management model. Here, the country is divided in 26 basin councils, and this allows the participation of the users and the local communities and the society in general. Let's say that this is a way to give voice to the citizens and also not only as a way of dialogue among the users and the societies and the authorities, but also to carry out and develop solutions in a democratic manner. We could see how the water governability models have their failures. This is not a perfect model, obviously, among other aspects, but here you could be seeing how it works. We have the steering committee in each basin committee, where we can find the representatives of the federal and state government, besides the municipal government, local government. And they call out a general assembly with the users, where this general assembly is composed by local committees from different communities in all the region. And that is operated by a commission of surveillance commission that composed by the superficial water committee and also the clean beaches committees. And we have some regions that they also count with the superficial waters that work with the groundwaters. And this diagram or this structure would enable better decision making in a participative manner. And one of the problems in it would be that we might have interests from the private companies or from certain groups of users or also from the civil society which have the control of those basin councils. Therefore, this would increase the possibility of corruption, making more difficult the decision-making process. And we also talk about the responsibility or the accountability and the representatives within these basin councils. They do not have very clear roles in relation to the decision-making for the water management locally and regionally. And once this national water plan is formulated for 6 years, for 4 years, in the last year we have an assessment for each administration or each government. In the end of each government, they have 3 indicators to evaluate if the management of the water resource was efficient or not. And equally, for each objective of the plan, for this national water plan, we are going to have a target which consists in a global measure that would be qualifying. In this case, the target to see if this target was achieved or not, and this is going to be supported by 2 parameters to be applied, so we could be having a continuous valuing of these objectives. Well, and this is also accompanied by different challenges, and always they will exist. Now let's see this first objective of the National Water Plan, which is associated to human rights, to water and sanitation. Well, here I mentioned 4 of the main challenges. The first challenge would be how to strengthen the operational organisms in the technical aspect, but also administrative and financial. And this is a big challenge currently. So increasingly we have more public international organizations and also private organizations that are striving for models, economic sustainable models that allow the drinking water systems to be self-sustainable. And the power, and they would not be depending on the subsidies from the federal government anymore. Well, really the service of sanitation and drinking water should be sustainable. And another challenge that is difficult to satisfy the demands of drinking water and sanitation in rural communities and in major cities as well. This is where we have to consider this part and the movement of circular economy, which is pressuring more, and how to use and how to develop solutions in small scale that are decentralized, enabling the use or the reuse of water in different perspectives in relation to agriculture and also energy. And finally, and one of the most important challenges would be that these rights to water and sanitation should incide on the health of the population. And with the COVID pandemic in this previous year, or in the previous 2 years, I mean, will not only be the shortage of drinking water in quantity and quality, but we should give greater importance to it due to the pandemics. So we have to focus at health as an additional nexus of water insecurity. Besides the conventional nexus that is water, energy, and food, we should also include health to it. And in Objective 2, which is water security, it's not explicitly said as in with the energy waters in water security, but we have different aspects related, such as ensuring a sustainable management and efficient management of the water. Here we have the main challenges to it. And first of it is related to the climate change. How to shift from drinking water systems to another system, or from the agricultural systems, or energy, thermoelectrical and hydroelectrical power plants, to systems that might be resilient to the climate change and the extreme systems. And also the green infrastructure. What would be the role that the green infrastructure will have, mainly in the cities? Well, here we could see all of the ecological and hydrological services that, well, these projects, they can involve the cities and everything related to urban agriculture or vertical agriculture. And also everything related to the hydrological risks, being them natural or anthropogenic. That would be a topic that we are dedicating lots of resources on, not only from the governments, but also from the major companies. Eventually, we have an international coalition for water resilience. They are working to reduce the water stress globally until 2050, and that's an initiative from the private sector. And the third would be the efficient use of water, and this is related to the field, agriculture, and the most important challenge would be how to continue increasing the water using the country, and how to produce more using less water. And in Mexico, just the irrigation part, the irrigation system is very deficient in most of the irrigated lands. The irrigated surface works through flood irrigation, and increasingly we have precision irrigation which use drones and high-resolution images from satellites. But we have to say that what are the incentives from the government, or the government could be giving for the agriculture implementing the best practices? We also want to focus on the circular economy in agriculture and how to use the treated residual waters for them and with their lands. And also, here in Mexico, we have something important which would be supporting the productive processes, but in zones with water availability. And here would not be only continuing giving incentives or support to the cultivations and crops in agriculture, to the agricultural regions where we find where are found on top of aquifers, and they have problems in relation to the exploration of water and the quality of water. And the last one, which is the most important, would be to establish incentives so the users can have the efficient use of water. In other parts of the world, as well as there is a certificate in organic agriculture and the certificate of products, low carbon products, and this is also being proposed for the water. In Chile, there is a seal on the product called as the blue certificate. And when you go to the market and you will buy some products, you have to see the label with a blue seal, which would indicate that this product you are buying comes from a company or a producer which really is using the best practices, and therefore it is a matter of environmental responsibility or accountability. And with this, we give some power to the consumers so they could award those producers that are performing a good work and punish those that are not doing this good work properly. And then we have the topic of ecosystems and the water quality. And in this decade, the current decade, the United Nations declared the decade for the ecosystem restoration. And increasingly, we have international organizations focusing on finding solutions to fight different problems, especially related to the contamination and the pollution of waters. And finally, the part of governability and transparency. Governance and transparency. One of the main challenges would be to ensure the transparency and zero corruption for water management. This is an excellent objective. And how are we going to achieve it? Well, as we see news such as this one, and estimate that approximately 30% of water is being stolen. So there are illegal extractions and use that the community do not have knowledge about. And this is transformed in a problem for the society. And also how we could be ensuring the human rights to access water and sanitation. The government mentions about ensuring gradually, but currently in Mexico there is a citizen initiative where the citizens are promoting a new law of waters, where it should be included the rights for water in the Constitution. So increasingly we see a significant role for the civil society in this type of matter or issues. And another important point would be the resolution of conflicts. An aquifer, which is extremely exploited, will not last long without problems, and this will generate conflicts among users. And here we have these maps, a map which shows Africa and Middle East. What would be the conflicts for the water? What would be the existing conflicts and what are the new conflicts that are coming up? And also, finally, we have the data part. opening the data. The data should allow open data for a better decision-making process. And that would be extremely positive because this would be bringing more trust from the citizens, and that will be a way to reduce this kind of conflict or mitigate them. And to conclude, we could see that the current program, the National Water Plan in Mexico, is in compliance to the SDGs. And you know that we have 8 goals. And of these 8 goals, 6 of those, not goals, but targets. The main targets of this National Water Resource Plan, the National Water Plan for 2014-24 are very similar and well aligned. So I would like to thank you so much for your time and attention. And now I am available for answering any questions you might have. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Agustín Brenan. I have some questions here that I will be making to you. Katia, well, not Katia, Carla Romão from Profiagua is asking us, what would be the public policies in Mexico for the management and mitigation of droughts? Well, yes, there are some policies like these. In the previous administration, it was created a program, the national program, against droughts, and a national program against the floods as well, called PRONACHE. And in this case, it would be PRONACOSE for drought, and tools were developed for the monitoring, and we created a monitoring system for the national drought system that would be updated monthly. And this monitoring, or this government has developed it because we had a significant drought, when we had a significant drought or when the agriculture lost their crops. And in lots of cases, they would go to the government asking for money and reimbursement, saying that they lost their production, their crop, and they need some reimbursement from the government. But the government would like to be sure that really the production had a problem due to drought and not due to a pest or a disease. So this is a kind of a program. And this monitoring program was extremely important for the National Drought Plan, which is a program that focused on, well, where the authorities would have developing management plans for the droughts at a regional level. It would at first not be a reactive process. It should be something preventive. And for the floods, well, it's only, the question was only about the droughts, right? Yes, that's it. That's the answer. But if you would like to mention anything about floods, no worry, feel free. Well, for the floods, we have PRONACHE that developed a risk map for floods in the different periods from 2 to up to 100 years in 33 cities in my country. And all of this information is available on the internet, on CONAGUA's website, which is equivalent to ANA in Brazil. Okay, we also have the action from André Cordeiro dos Santos, who is asking, what is the main conflict in the water management in Mexico? Well, we have lots of conflicts there in the whole country. I believe that currently the major conflict in the previous years, well, we had 2 important conflicts. One in the border with the United States, in the city of Mexicali, which was a beer company from the United States that wanted to open there in Mexicali, but that's a border region with California, but it's the middle of the desert. It's the driest region of Mexico, and never rains, basically. Never rains. It's like a desert. And the problem of those regions is that there is an aquifer and there is no more water supply available or water sources available, and we don't have the availability of water for new water grants and licenses. And this company obtained this license or grant through this exchange, and they bought the water rights from other users. And people, agricultures, people that did not agree with them generated this conflict, and in the end the company had to close, and they had to make lots of investments, and it was a national program. And last year we had a problem due to the lack of water, a water shortage problem in the district of irrigation in Chihuahua in the north of Mexico. And that issue was politicized, it became very political, and the agriculturists were saying that the government or Conagua did not have rights over that, and part of the volume of this water should be delivered to the United States. And the United States also, from other basins, sends water to the to Mexico. We also have conflicts on mining issues due to the concessions and licenses from the mining companies. They use a lot of water. And also we have a lot of politicization in relation to the waters in the mining activities. But mainly, the main two problems would be the ones that I just mentioned from Mexicali and the beer company in Mexicali and the agricultures in Chihuahua. Well, Elias Adriano is asking how the government and societies mobilize themselves in the water management in Mexico. Oh, well, we have the basin councils. And you, as a user or citizen, you could be going to this basin council, and you could be part of it directly or indirectly as well. And let's say maybe that would be the institutional pathway for it. And now in Mexico, and also in mainly Mexico, in lots of municipalities in Mexico, we have water systems that are communitary, where the municipal government does not manage the water, but the citizens got together, and this happens mainly in the poor municipalities or indigenous municipalities in Mexico. 10 million inhabitants in Mexico are indigenous, and in lots of cases these municipalities have a strong indigenous presence or Afro-Mexican presence, and they use a lot of this water on their own. They don't need any licenses or grants. Let's say that we have two possibilities for the city being involved in this: institutionally through the water basins, or creating local committees with community water systems. Thank you so much, Agustin Brenar. Alcione Gama now is thanking you so much for the presentation, and she asks, what are the indicators being monitored and the relationships with the SDGs and the international activities of water protection? Well, what are the indicators? And, well, I believe that I added here to the presentation. I'm going to share my screen here to show it again.
Digamos, los indicadores van a...
The indicators will vary according to the objective that you are covering. For the part of rights to water and sanitation, this would be the target. The target would be the water volume being protected. And it should be designated for the public urban use. And the two parameters will be the proportion of the population that has access to water daily, because sometimes these statistics, well, before the government worked with statistics that said, well, I already built the system, I installed the pipe, and water storage exists, it's connected. So, but in lots of cases, we have some households that receive water maybe once a month or once every 2 months. And obviously here, this definition would make it more strict. You would have the infrastructure for having water, but also the water should be going to your house every day. And this sanitation or the treatment of waters should also be applied in the 14 states with a greater amount of water. And the other parameter would be the percentage of residuals water that is treated. In Mexico, we have a lot of treatment plants, but most of them, 70–80% of them, are not operating, are out of operation. So we have to reactivate this kind of structure there. And we have to verify that this situation is going to improve. And obviously for the other objectives, we also have these parameters here. For the part of water security, how to enhance and improve the water productivity and the water efficiency in agricultural areas, the number of inhabitants being protected against the floods, and also the agricultural surface protected against floods, and also all this part of monitoring the quality of water in basins and aquifers. So these are the parameters that the government decided to implement in this term, or administration. Okay, thank you so much. Glazy Regina is asking how the basic educational system participates in the management of water resources in Mexico. Oh, well, the government is also, for about 15 or 20 years, that they created this exclusive unit for managing the social communication. Currently, the current government, besides social communication, they also created another management, which would be social participation. And that's extremely important for education. Since young, the children should be informed about the culture of saving water, and not only watering the gardens or taking a long shower, but other important aspects as well that are starting to become more present in their conscious related to the water aspect. How many liters or how many cubic meters of water am I using when I eat a barbecue, or how many liters is equivalent to a cup of coffee or a cup of milk. So bringing this consciousness and awareness, the children can grow with the millennial generation. And the millennials don't eat so much beef as my generation and my father's generation. And also, that would be a movement of a generation which is more concerned about the environment. And also, thanks to those environmental educational campaign, water campaigns that the government is implementing together with the state government and municipal governments. Okay, Agostinho, thank you so much. We still have one more question here. From Carla Romão. The national policy of water resources in Mexico has instruments for management. In Brazil, we have the payment for the use of water and instruments for the planning, licenses, and the inclusion of water bodies. Do you have an instrument in Mexico similar to this type? Yes. The payment for the water use, yes, we do have that in Mexico. And well, we have different ways of payment for the water use. On one hand, the waters are binational. And who would grant the license would be the federal authority, CONAGUA. And they grant licenses and concessions based on the water availability on each basin or aquifer. And we might have a user or a person or a company there. In this case, for the agriculture and irrigation, the irrigation districts receive a quota and they have to pay for it. The agricultural users, and we're talking about 80% of the water consumed in Mexico, which is in agriculture. So the users or the producers, they organize themselves and they are going to be giving quotas of water, amount of waters that would really be prices, very low prices. And with that, they will be using to improve the infrastructure works. And besides, the public urban region, they must request Conagua. Depending on the volume of water they will use, they might be needed to pay a specific amount per year. Therefore, what I already mentioned, well, in Mexico and also in other parts of the country and of the world, there is an illegal extraction of water, which is very significant. Just like the government tries to foster this water culture in the Mexican culture, there is this culture, not for all the Mexicans, but there is this culture of illegality, illegal extractions of water without requesting a license and opening a well, or stealing water from the public water network. So yes, that's a very complex topic that must be accompanied not only by incentives, but also punishments and penalties from the side of the government for those that break the law. Okay, thank you so much, Agustin. And to close, due to our time limits, Professor Rosa Formiga is asking us, what would be your assessment about the level of advancement for the implementation of IWRM in Ecuador? I'm sorry, in Mexico. I did not understand the question very clearly. Could you repeat it, please? What is the state of implementation or the status of implementation of IWRM in Mexico, Integrated Water Resource Management? Well, in Mexico, it's very unequal. We have a lot of inequity in this implementation. If you go to northern Mexico, which is the part that on one side it is more, the economic activity is more important than the south, the cities such as Monterrey, where we have the most efficient operational institution in Mexico, where 90% of the residuals water would be treated, and where we monitor the water, the superficial and underground water sources. Let's say that in these cases, the government would, or the municipal authority, have implemented most of the points and objectives for IWRM. But also, in the northern part of Mexico, well, if you go to the south, you will see institutions that do not have this technical capability or the financial capability to be able to have a good implementation of IWRM. So that's a huge challenge to harmonize this integrated water resource management in all the country and avoid this kind of situation. Okay, Agustin, thank you so much. Hugo, you're on mute. I'm sorry for that, guys. Well, in case your question has not been answered, the organization staff is going to post on the chat 2 emails where you can send your questions to, and afterwards they are going to be answered. They will be forwarded to the speakers. Before we close, I would like to invite everyone to announce and participate in the 4th webinar of the 2nd cycle, which will be held on July 1st from 11 to 12:30 with agronomist Francisco Meza from the Catholic University of Chile, talking about the topic of integrated water resource management in Chile and the strategies to reach the SDG number 6. And in the same day, Ana will present the role on the implementation of integrated water resource management in Brazil and SDG 6. This topic will be presented by the coordinator of information management for the water resource management, Marcos Fucte, from ANA. Now I pass the word to Professor Jefferson Nascimento Oliveira, General Coordinator of Profiagua in Brazil. Thank you so much, Hugo. We have to thank our speakers, Dr. Alicia, we have to thank Dr. Agustín for this wonderful presentation, and so we could be learning a little bit more about the strategies that exist in the Latin American countries about water management. We also would like to thank to our participants, Professor Hugo, who was our moderator, and also to our interpreters for helping us understanding everything, and mainly to all of you watching us. Don't forget to be in our next webinar and presentation for the 2nd cycle of webinars from Profiagua, which is the professional mastering in networks for the regulation and management of water resources, composed by 14 public universities, and this integration with other universities and other researchers as well. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care. See you next Thursday again at 11 o'clock a.m. with this other webinar to close this 2nd international webinar cycle. Thank you so much, everyone. Hugo, back to you. Thank you so much, Jefferson. Thank you so much, all participants, for your presence and contributions. See you next time.